Welcome back, everybody, to the Daily Financial News Roundup. We've got some really fascinating stories today, from Apple to SpaceX to TikTok.
Wow, sounds like we've got quite a bit to cover.
We do, so let's jump right in. Starting off this time with a heartwarming story from Apple. Tim Cook, Apple CEO, recently shared an anecdote about how his father took a tumble at home.
Oh no.
Yeah, and luckily he was wearing his Apple Watch, and the fall detection feature kicked in, automatically alerted emergency services who were able to get to him quickly.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say technology can really be a lifesaver. I mean, they even had to break down the door to reach him.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a dramatic rescue. And it's not just a one-off either. We've been hearing more and more stories about how these wearable devices, these Apple Watches, are detecting heart conditions and all sorts of health issues.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, as this technology keeps advancing, who knows what it'll be capable of? Of course, all that personal data being collected does raise some questions about privacy.
Yeah, that's a valid point for sure. Something to definitely keep in mind. Okay, moving on now. Let's talk about cryptocurrency. There's this new platform called DDB Miner that's generating some buzz. They're all about cloud mining, claiming to make it easier for pretty much anyone to get involved in cryptocurrency mining.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about them. They offer these different contract tiers with varying investment levels, and they emphasize clean energy and using all the latest and greatest equipment.
Sounds pretty tempting, especially for people who, might be intimidated by the whole setting up your own hardware thing. But, I mean, is it all that's cracked up to be? What do you think?
Well, you always have to be careful in the crypto world, right? I mean, there are a lot of scams out there, so before anyone throws their money at it, it's super important to do your homework and really make sure the platform is legit.
For sure. Wise words. Okay, so from the virtual world of crypto, let's switch gears to space exploration, or should I say space mishaps, because it seems SpaceX hit a bit of a snag.
Oh, you're talking about Starship prototype.
Yeah, the one that exploded mid-flight. Apparently there was debris scattered all over the Caribbean, even caused some tremors in the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Yeah, I heard about that. It's a real shame, especially with Blue Origin, their competitor, just successfully launching their new Glenn rocket. This explosion is definitely a setback for SpaceX. I mean, it raises serious concerns about the safety and environmental impact of these private space launches. And, well, they're happening more and more frequently these days.
Definitely a lot to think about there. All right, let's bring it back down to earth now, and, well, let's talk about TikTok. It seems like the saga continues with Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful himself, throwing his hat in the ring.
Ah,
He's teamed up with former LA Dodgers owner Frank McCourt to bid for TikTok's U.S. operations.
It's a pretty bold move, I'd say. Their idea is to acquire TikTok and rebuild it, using American technology and address all those privacy concerns that have been swirling around.
Right. I mean, with all the talk about declining ad revenue and user retention challenges, it's a risky proposition for sure.
Absolutely. And then you've got Mark Cuban, who's not exactly optimistic about their chances. He thinks it's highly unlikely that ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, will actually agree to sell.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated situation for sure, with political and economic factors all tangled up in it. Who knows how it'll all play out? Okay, so switching gears again now to a reminder about data security. OneBlood, that big blood donation organization, well, they just announced a data breach.
Oh, that's not good.
No, it's not. It seems that names and even social security numbers might have been compromised.
That's scary. It just goes to show in this digital age, our data is always vulnerable. It seems like OneBlood is notifying affected individuals, though.
That's good.
You're
And
like,
apparently there's a law firm investigating potential claims.
yeah.
It really underscores the importance of strong cybersecurity measures for any organization, especially those handling such sensitive information.
Couldn't agree more. We all need to be super careful with our data online.
Absolutely. Speaking of TikTok, let's imagine for a moment what would happen if they actually were banned.
Well, some analysts are predicting that Meta, Facebook and Instagram's parent company, could actually benefit big time from a TikTok ban.
Really? How so?
Well, they're projecting billions in ad revenue, potentially shifting over to Meta, and a huge surge in user engagement on their platforms.
Makes sense, right?
People are going to go looking for alternatives if TikTok disappears.
Yeah, I guess so. Makes you wonder what other platforms might emerge too.
Okay.
Okay, so shifting focus again, This time to a company that's seen some rough times lately, TELUS International.
Oh, yeah. Their stock took a major hit, like a 36% plunge.
Ouch.
It all happened after they reported declining revenues and their CEO announced his retirement.
Yeah, those are never good signs.
And now there's a law firm, Bergar, Eagle and Squire, investigating the whole thing. They specialize in shareholder rights litigation, so it seems like they're looking into whether investors were misled or not.
Makes you realize how much scrutiny companies face when things start going south financially. And it's not just TELUS International either. Block, Inc., formerly Square, they're having their own legal trouble.
Oh, what's going on with them?
Well, there's a class action lawsuit that's been filed against them, claiming they had all these compliance failures that basically have allowed a bunch of shady stuff to happen on their platforms.
Like what kind of shady stuff?
Well, the lawsuit alleges that they turned a blind eye to money laundering, child sexual abuse content, and even transactions tied to terrorism financing.
Wow. Those are some serious accusations.
They are, and if they're true, Block could be facing major financial and reputational damage. It's a sobering reminder that no company, no matter how big or successful, is immune to these kinds of risks.
Absolutely. It's definitely something for all companies to take seriously.
For sure. All right, let's move on now to the legal system. This time, the new Civil Liberties Alliance, or NCLA, is challenging a Supreme Court precedent.
Really? What precedent are they challenging?
The petty offense exception, the one that basically says you don't get a jury trial for minor offenses. The NCLA is arguing that this exception actually goes against our constitutional right to a jury trial.
Interesting. What's their reasoning?
Well, their argument is that even offenses that seem minor can have serious consequences for people, and everyone deserves the protection of a jury trial.
I can see their point. I wonder how this challenge will play out in the courts.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens for sure. All right, let's shift gears now to something a little more positive. There's good news coming out of the forestry sector. Western Forest Products and the United Steelworkers Union have reached a new agreement.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, they've ratified a new 6-year collective agreement.
Wow, 6 years. That definitely points to some stability in the industry.
It does, and it also shows a collaborative spirit between the company and its workforce. I mean, the agreement includes things like wage increases, benefit enhancements, and it tackles some of the key concerns that the workers had.
That's encouraging. It's always good to see companies and workers finding common ground.
Couldn't agree more. All right, let's talk about a company that's been a real star in terms of long-term growth. Lam Research.
Lam Research, what about them?
Well, get this. If you had invested $1,000 in Lam Research, or LRCX, as it's known on the stock market, 15 years ago, that investment would be worth over $23,000 today.
Wow, that's incredible.
Right. It really highlights the potential of playing the long game when it comes to investing, especially if you pick companies that consistently outperform the market.
Absolutely, a great example of patience paying off.
For sure. Unfortunately, our last story today is another case of a financial technology company running into some legal trouble. This time it's Dave Inc.
Oh no, what happened?
Well, both the Justice Department and the FTC are taking action against them over some pretty serious allegations.
What kind of allegations?
They're being accused of misleading consumers with deceptive advertising and hidden fees.
Oh no, not another one.
Yeah, the lawsuit claims they weren't upfront about their cash advance services, charged fees that people didn't expect, and made it really difficult for people to cancel their subscriptions.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
It is, and this case really brings to light the increasing scrutiny that fintech companies are facing and the absolute importance of transparency and fair practices, especially in this industry.
I mean, people need to be able to trust the companies they're dealing with when it comes to their finances. That's just basic.
100%. And it's not just about trust either. Regulators have a big role to play in making sure that these companies are operating ethically and not taking advantage of vulnerable consumers.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a shared responsibility.
Definitely. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from life-saving wearable tech to legal battles, market swings, and all the changes happening in the world of finance. What do you think is the most important takeaway from all these stories?
That's a good question. I think the common thread running through all of this is that we're living in the time of constant evolution and disruption. I mean, you've got traditional industries like healthcare and space exploration colliding with rapidly advancing technology. And in finance, cryptocurrency and fintech are shaking things up while regulators are trying to catch up. It's both exciting and a little bit overwhelming.
It is. What advice would you give our listeners as they try to make sense of it all?
Well, I think the most important thing is to stay informed. We can't just bury our heads in the sand and hope things settle down. We need to engage with these changes, understand both the potential benefits and the risks, and really be active participants in shaping this new world that's emerging.
That's a great message. It's about taking control and being proactive.
Exactly.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to think about as they go about their day?
We've talked about several companies facing scrutiny, legal challenges, and even the possibility of being banned. And it makes me wonder about something. What's the right balance between encouraging innovation and making sure that companies are operating ethically and protecting consumers? It's a complex issue without any easy answers.
It's a question worth pondering for sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
My pleasure. Always happy to be here.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey through today's financial news. We encourage you to keep exploring these stories and stay informed about the forces shaping our world. Until next time.
Yeah, things like money laundering and even child sexual abuse content. And then there were transactions that were potentially linked to terrorism financing. It's a lot.
It is. And I mean, if these allegations turn out to be true, Block could be in some really hot water. We're talking major financial hits and serious damage to their reputation. It's a big wake-up call for any company out there.
Absolutely. No company is invincible.
Exactly. All right, so let's turn our attention to the legal system now. The new Civil Liberties Alliance, the NCLA, they're challenging a Supreme Court precedent.
Oh, wow. Really? Which one?
The petty offense exception, the one that says you don't have the right to a jury trial for minor offenses.
Okay.
The NCLA is arguing that this actually goes against our constitutional right to a jury trial. Their point is that even these seemingly small offenses, they can still have some pretty big consequences for people.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, everyone deserves their day in court, right?
That's their argument.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so some good news now coming from the forestry sector. It looks like Western Forest Products and the United Steelworkers Union have finally reached a new agreement.
Oh, that's fantastic news.
It is. They've just ratified a new 6-year collective agreement.
6 years. Wow, that's a pretty long time.
It is. Shows some real commitment to stability,
Yeah.
And not just that, it also shows a willingness to work together, the company and the workers. This new agreement includes wage increases, benefit enhancements, and it even addresses some of those core issues that the workers had brought up.
That's great to hear. Always good to see those kinds of wins for the workers.
Agreed. All right, let's switch gears and talk about a company that's been killing it in terms of long-term growth. Lam Research.
Lam Research. Oh, yeah, I think I've heard of them.
Well, imagine this. 15 years ago, if you had invested $1,000 in their stock, LRCX, today that investment would be worth over $23,000.
Whoa. Seriously.
Yeah, it really highlights the power of long-term investing, especially when you choose companies that consistently outperform the market.
That's amazing. Sometimes patience really is a virtue.
It really is.
Yeah.
All right, unfortunately, our last story for today is another one about a financial technology company that's landed in some legal hot water. This time, it's Dave Inc.
Dave Inc. I'm not familiar with them.
They're a fintech company, and it seems like both the Justice Department and the FTC are coming after them.
Oh, that's never a good sign. What's going on?
They're being accused of misleading consumers through, deceptive advertising and all those hidden fees.
Gosh, I hate those hidden fees. Never know what you're actually going to end up paying.
Right. Well, according to the lawsuit, they basically weren't transparent about their cash advance services. They hit people with unexpected charges, and then they made it super hard to cancel subscriptions.
That's awful. Sounds pretty shady if you ask me.
Yeah, and it really underlines the importance of transparency and fairness in the fintech industry. I mean, when it comes to people's finances, trust is absolutely essential.
Totally agree. And, it's not just on the companies either. Regulators also have a big responsibility to make sure these companies are playing by the rules. Protecting consumers should be a top priority.
No doubt about it. It's a shared responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a two-way street for sure.
It is. Well, wow. I mean, we've covered a ton of ground today, from, those incredible life-saving wearables to all the legal battles, those crazy market swings, and all the changes happening in the financial world. What do you think, what's the big takeaway from all these stories?
That's a good question. I guess the one thing that keeps popping up for me is that we're living in a time of just constant evolution and disruption. I mean, you see it everywhere, right? You've got those, traditional industries like healthcare and space exploration kind of crashing into this rapidly changing world of technology. And then, in finance, cryptocurrency, and all that fintech stuff are shaking things up, and the regulators are just trying to keep pace. It's exciting, but it's a little overwhelming too, to be honest.
I hear you. So what advice would you give to our listeners? Like, how should they, process all this information?
Well, I think the most important thing is to, stay informed. We can't just pretend it's not happening, right?
Right.
We've got to engage with all these changes, understand the potential upsides and downsides, and really be active in like shaping this new world that's taking shape.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about taking control and not just being a passive observer.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to, think about?
It's interesting. We've talked about all these companies facing scrutiny, legal challenges, even the possibility of getting banned. It makes me think, like, where's the line? Where's that balance between, encouraging innovation and making sure that companies are doing the right thing, being ethical, protecting consumers? It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts today. It's been a great conversation.
Anytime. Happy to be here.
And all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this wild ride through today's financial news. Keep exploring these stories, stay informed, and we'll catch you next time.